5 spiritual steps that brought my money back when I was left with nothing. The last step changed everything in 24 hours. Florence Scovel Shinn. If someone had told me a few years ago that I would lose everything I had built, my company, my prestige, my financial stability, I would have laughed. I was a well-known name in the tech industry, a former employee of a giant like IBM, with a resume that opened doors and a mind focused on solutions. When I launched my own technical consulting firm, the results came quickly. $1 million contracts, a growing team, international travel, recognition. I thought I was at my peak. And I was. But not for the right reason. Then suddenly, everything collapsed like an earthquake. In this video, I'm going to share my story of a brutal financial downfall, and how an angel named Florence Scovel Shinn, with her wonderful spiritual gift, taught me through her writings how to turn things around, something that seemed almost impossible. With just 5 steps, stay with me in this video, and learn how to turn your life around too. And while you're at it, comment below and tell me where you're watching from. The beginning of the fall, when success made me blind. My name is Susan Jones Smith. I'm 45 years old. For many years, I was considered a reference in the world of technology. I worked at one of the largest companies in the field in the United States, and after nearly 2 decades accumulating knowledge, awards, and networking, I decided to take the big leap. I founded my own technical consulting firm. First, everything flowed. I had $1 million contracts, a dedicated team, international travel, and the most dangerous thing of all, the feeling that nothing could go wrong. And maybe that's the first warning sign, one that many of you may have already experienced or are going through right now. When everything starts going right, it's easy to believe we're invincible, that we have absolute control. And it was exactly that mindset that began to erode my stability without me realizing it. I wanted to grow more, too fast. I started making rushed decisions, investing in areas I didn't fully understand. And worse, I began to distance myself from the people who truly supported me, especially the team members who had built everything with me. Became arrogant. Arrogance blinded me, and the universe responded. Today, looking back, I realize that success didn't bring me down. What brought me down was the illusion that success was solely my own merit. I disconnected from the source, from my intuition, and started listening only to my ego. And you? Have you ever felt like you were in total control? Until life proved you wrong. Tell me in the comments. You might relate to this part of my story. The fall was silent at first. A client didn't renew the contract. An investment didn't bring any return. A debt piled up more than I expected. But I kept denying it. I said, "It's just a phase. This will pass." But it didn't. And when I realized it, my company was collapsing. Within a few months, I lost clients, contracts, credibility. I could no longer pay salaries. I had to let go of people who had been with me since the very first contract. From the very beginning, people who believed in me. And soon after, I lost the company. And with it, I lost everything. My lifestyle, my sense of security, my peace. I ended up in debt, frustrated, and alone. I felt like a failure, humiliated, ashamed even to leave the house. My name, once admired in the industry, was now stained. I wanted to find an explanation, a way out, something that would give me back not only my money, but the meaning of everything. It was at this point that spirituality entered. But not with angels singing or flashing lights. It entered quietly, almost unassumingly. One day, in the back of an old book group I was part of, I came across a quote by Florence Scovel Shinn. "Nothing is lost in the universe. All the good that was yours is still yours, and will return multiplied at the right time." I wanted to find an explanation, a way out, something that would bring back not just the money, but the meaning behind it all. That's when spirituality came in. But not with angels singing or flashing lights. It came in silently, almost unassumingly. One day, deep in an old reading group I used to be part of, I came across a quote by Florence Scovel Shinn. "Nothing is ever lost in the universe. Every good that was yours is still yours and will return multiplied at the right time. That stopped me in my tracks. I read the sentence 5 times over. Seemed absurd because I had lost everything. But there was hope in it. Possibility. And it was that spark of hope that pushed me to search for more. That same night, I looked up the book The Secret Door to Success and started reading it as if my life depended on those pages. And in a way, it did. And maybe you're here for the same reason, a spark. A whisper that there's something beyond the chaos. If that's your case, write the word restart in the comments. It'll be our silent code for those who are ready to rebuild. With each page I read, I began to see a pattern. Florence didn't talk about success the way the world does. She spoke of an inner door, a spiritual code, a combination of faith, words, and action. And right there, in that sleepless night, with tears soaking my pillow, I made a commitment to myself. I will walk through that door. And I will prosper again, but this time the right way. That was the first step in my turnaround. Acknowledging where and how I had fallen without punishing myself, but with a commitment to never repeat the same mistakes. In the next steps, I'll share how I used Florence's teachings to transform my mind, my words, and my vibrational field, until money, opportunities, and confidence came back. And came back doubled. If this story has started to move something inside you, leave a like. Helps me understand that this kind of content has value. And more importantly, share it with someone who also needs to rediscover their own secret door to success. Rewriting my reality. The forgotten power of the word. If the first step was to acknowledge my fall with brutal honesty and make space for something new, the second step was something so simple, and at the same time so powerful that I almost dismissed it. Almost. I was sitting on my porch on a gray late afternoon, with a book on my lap and a soul in pieces. The secret door to success was there. Pin. Underlined. Almost entirely highlighted and scribbled on. It was my lifeline. And then, right there between one paragraph and another, Florence dropped one of those sentences that stop your heart for a second. The word is your magic wand. I slowly closed the book, held that sentence in the air like someone holding something fragile and precious. And I thought, is this for real? I was broke, exhausted, with eternal dark circles under my eyes and a knot in my throat that felt like a part of me. And this woman was telling me that everything I said had power. No way, I thought. But then, a flood of memories started rushing into my mind. Phrases I had repeated day after day. Everything goes wrong for me. I was born to struggle. Money comes in and slips through my fingers. I don't think I'll ever get back on my feet. Life is just too hard for me. It was like hearing my own voice echoing into the universe. And then I understood. It wasn't just a beautiful metaphor. It was literal. I was declaring my own downfall without even realizing it. Every word, an unconscious spell. Every complaint, a code sent to the invisible. And the invisible simply obeyed. Florence was right. My mouth was a factory of negative prophecies. And reality. It was just following the script I had written with my voice. That week I started an exercise that seemed silly. But it changed my life. I grabbed a simple notebook, navy blue hardcover, and I wrote in black ink at the top of the first page. My new words create my new reality. Felt dramatic, but I needed that solemnity. It was like opening a new constitution, the constitution of my soul. And I made a pact with myself. From that moment on, every time a defeatist thought came up, I would confront it with a new declaration. Decree. A verbal spell just as Florence taught. When my mind said, "You're broke," I would take a deep breath and respond, "I am a divine magnet for prosperity. Everything I need is already on its way." When the old ghost whispered, "No one trusts you anymore," I would firmly say, "I am guided by divine wisdom. The right people find me with ease." At first, I'll admit, felt fake, almost like a ridiculous performance. I would say those sentences looking in the mirror, and my expression answered with sarcasm. But I kept going, because deep down, even with fear, I wanted to believe. I started carrying those phrases in my purse. I wrote some on my phone. I stuck post-its on the bathroom mirror. I turned my daily routine into a field of verbal reprogramming. Before going to bed, I read the affirmations softly like a prayer. Upon waking, I repeated the same phrases while staring at the ceiling, before even getting up. It was as if I was retraining my brain to dream. And something started to happen. Not on the outside. Not yet. But inside. The words began to make my body move differently. My shoulders weren't as slumped anymore. My voice trembled less during phone calls. And the fear, that paralyzing fear, grew quieter with each passing day. And then, one random day, something happened that brought me to tears of gratitude. I opened my email in the morning and read, "Hi Susan, how are you? I don't know if you're still taking clients, but your name came to me today. I have a referral for you if you're interested." It was from a former client I hadn't spoken to in almost a year. The most incredible part. It happened on the very same day that, for the first time, I had written firmly in my notebook. Perfect clients are on their way to me with ease and joy. Coincidence? Maybe. But Florence used to say, "Man is master of what he says and slave to what he does not say." And I chose, in that moment, to be the master of my new story. Of course, it wasn't perfect. I slipped up all the time. I'd say something negative without realizing. But instead of beating myself up, I began correcting myself out loud. Sometimes I'd even joke with myself. Oops, cancelled. New version. I am guided, I am prosperous, I am capable. I did it in the car, in the shower, in the grocery store line. It became a full-time spiritual training. And little by little, without fanfare, without noise, I started to change. Not just what I attracted, but who I was. The desperate and cynical woman began to make room for a more grounded Susan. More present. More connected to a wisdom greater than herself. I felt like someone who had walked through a dark storm and finally saw a ray of sunlight breaking through the clouds. And that ray of sunlight came from the words I chose to nurture. That's when I truly understood. The second spiritual step that brought my money back was recognizing the creative power of my words and beginning to use them in my favor. Now I want to offer you a challenge. Simple yet powerful. Choose a new power phrase to repeat every day for the next 7 days. It doesn't need to be complex. It just needs to feel true for the version of you that is being reborn. Could be, I am prosperity in action. Everything works together for my good. I am divinely guided. My words create miracles. Or you can create your own. Something that makes your heart vibrate. Something that reminds you every day of who you really are. Write that phrase in the comments. Let's create a collective field of living words. And if this video is touching you, if something inside is remembering your power, leave a like. That shows me I'm not alone on this journey. In the next step, I'll share how I managed to shift my emotional and energetic vibration, even while surrounded by chaos, and how that opened doors I never imagined existed. But it all began with one choice: to use my word as a magic wand, and my mouth as a sacred altar. The energy you emanate is the money you attract. You know that moment when you're at rock bottom. But not just at the bottom. It's like you're sitting there in old pajamas, with a cold cup in your hand, staring at the wall and thinking, how did I end up here? And then, in the middle of that unsettling emptiness, someone says, you need to raise your vibration. At the time, that phrase made me want to laugh. Or cry. Actually both at once. Vibration. Thought. I can barely sleep. My bills are overdue. The bank calls me more than my mom. And you want me to vibrate. Felt like asking someone who's drowning to dance. Sounded cruel, unfair, out of touch. The house where inspiring meetings, brilliant brainstorms, and bold decisions once happened was now just silence and shame. The couch had become my office, my bed, and my confidant. And the only thing that moved in there was the ticking clock, reminding me that time was passing, and I wasn't moving at all. But it was precisely in that emptiness, in that absence of noise and distraction, that something different began to happen. As if, in the middle of chaos, a seed had been silently planted. One night, tired of trying to control everything but still not knowing how to let go, I reread one of Florence's passages that I had underlined, but never truly absorbed. You are like a broadcasting station. Whatever you feel and believe, you transmit. And the universe responds on the same frequency. That sentence stopped my world. Closed the book. Closed my eyes. And sat there, very still, asking myself, what have I been transmitting really? The answer came quickly, like a loving slap of awareness. Fear, failure, guilt, shame. If I were a radio station, I'd been broadcasting Poor Me FM 24/7. And the universe, well, it was just sending the same signal back. The next morning, something changed in me. It wasn't a beam of light or a magical epiphany. It was a small decision, but a definite one. I decided, if I'm a station, then I get to choose what I transmit. Just like that. Not magical, not instant, but intentional. I started with what I had. My body, my breath, my phone and headphones. Every day for just 10 minutes I chose a song. Not one of those toxic positivity songs that fake happiness, but music that connected me with something greater, something deeper. Close my eyes, breathe, and imagine the woman I wanted to become. In the beginning, my mind screamed, "You're faking it. You've got nothing left." But I replied with quiet firmness, "Even with nothing, I still get to choose what I feel right now." Kept going. I persisted. And one day, at the end of that silent practice, felt peace. It was small, fragile, like a breeze in the desert, but it was real. And I clung to it like someone finding water after days of hopeless wandering. Little by little, I expanded that feeling. I started leaving the house. Yes, afraid of running into people, of being asked painful questions. But I went. I walked in the park, listened to the sounds of life, and imagined myself in motion again. I started using a perfume I had tucked away in the back of a drawer. The same one I wore on my boldest days, when I closed deals with a sparkle in my eyes. I wore clothes that made me feel elegant, even if my only outing was to the bakery. It was almost like I was telling the universe, I'm still here, I still see myself, and I'm coming back. 'Cause vibration is that. It's what you emit even when no one is watching. And then, something happened. A friend invited me to a casual dinner. Nothing major. A small group of professionals in tech and innovation. She said, "I thought of you the other day. In talks, the way you made people believe in themselves. I still think you have a lot to offer." I admit, my first instinct was to find an excuse. Say what? That I went bankrupt. That I lost everything. That I'm living off a friend's loan. But that night I chose to do things differently. I went. I got ready as if it were a gala. Not for the status, but because the self-respect I was reclaiming deserved to be celebrated. A dinner I was honest. I didn't sugarcoat. I didn't hide. I shared my story. I spoke about the fall, the shame, the silence. But I also talked about the vibrational shift. About what I was learning from Florence. About how I was rebuilding from the inside out. And you know what happened? 2 weeks later I got an email. It was from one of the guests that night. "Susan, I'm building an innovation hub for a startup. Thought of you as a strategic mentor. Want to talk." That's when I understood. It's not about chasing. It's about shifting your frequency. Not because I was forcing it, but because I had become someone new. The energy you emit is the money, the people, and the opportunities you attract. Florence said, "When man aligns with the divine plan, the doors open." And that's exactly what happened. The outer world began to respond to the new woman being born inside. This was the third spiritual step that brought money back into my life. Shifting my vibration, not through effort, but through intention, presence, and faith. If you're watching this right now and feel like your life is stuck, if it seems like everything you try goes wrong, I ask you with kindness and honesty, what have you been transmitting? What's your station? You can change that. Today, right now. Comment below with one word that represents the energy you choose to start vibrating from this moment on. Could be courage, joy, confidence, peace, abundance, freedom. Choose yours. Write it down. This could be your new starting point. And you'll discover how, and finally understand the power of surrender. And realize that letting go of control was, paradoxically, what gave me everything back. Life began to give me more than I ever imagined. If this video is helping you in any way, and if something inside you is moved, leave your like, because that helps the channel reach more people who, just like you, need this light. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. 'Cause the next steps will show you that what seems impossible can and will happen. Just needs to be vibrated with faith. Letting go of control is what gave me it all back. If there's one thing I learned the hard way, it's that attachment suffocates, fear imprisons, and control, no matter how much it disguises itself as competence or responsibility, actually takes us further away from what we desire most. That was the fourth step of my journey, and honestly, it might have been the hardest one so far. Letting go of control. But before I tell you how that saved me, and I promise it truly saved me, I need to take you back, way before the fall, back to where the cracks in the story began, even when everything still seemed to be shining. 'Cause you see, I've always been controlling, since I was a child. As a little girl, I organized playtime like meetings. I signed roles in school plays. I corrected things that weren't even mine to fix. I was afraid of improvisation, afraid of the unexpected. As a teenager, I was obsessive with schedules, deadlines, to-do lists. If anything went off plan, panic. But I hid it well. People called me organized, mature for my age. But deep down it was just fear of losing control. In college, I was the one who led every group project, redid other people's sloppy work, made schedules even for holidays. And when I founded my own company, that's when I became a control machine. Nothing happened without my approval. Every detail went through me. Finances, branding, social media posts, legal contracts. The obsession gave me results. Yes, visible, admired. But you know what else it gave me? Loneliness, exhaustion, and eventually, ruin. When the first contracts started falling through, when employees began to quit, when the numbers started screaming that something was wrong, I did what I always did. Tried to fix everything on my own. Endless meetings, sleepless nights, forced strategies. Day by day, I was sinking deeper, but faking it better. And what no one saw was what happened after hours. I'd lock myself in the bathroom, turn on the shower just to muffle the sound of my crying, replay every mistake in my mind, like trying to rebuild a house of cards after a storm, come up with desperate plans to bounce back. Because in my mind, failure was not an option. And then bankruptcy came. Dry, cold, merciless. And with it came the collapse of the fortress of control I'd spent a lifetime building. Fast forward a few months. I had already lost my commercial office, my car, and most of my professional contacts. I started going to a modest co-working space, almost as a way to keep moving. I needed to re-enter the market, whatever that meant. On the outside I smiled, but inside the shadow still lingered. Even after diving into Florence's books, even after starting visualizations, affirmations, meditations, there was still a subtle, persistent voice inside me saying, if you don't make it happen, nothing will happen. It was in that space, between the old Susan who didn't want to die and the new one who hadn't been born yet, that Julia entered. She was a holistic therapist there just for a meeting. She looked at me with kindness. She truly saw me. And then, with a voice both firm and sweet, she asked, have you tried letting go? I gave a sarcastic laugh. Because of course in my mind, letting go was just spiritual fluff. Let go of what? The bills due tomorrow, the debts choking me, or the story I spent years building? She just smiled, like someone who understands, like someone who's been through that place of bruised pride and shaken faith. No, let go of control. You don't need to carry all of this. Let life show you the way. Let God act. I went home irritated and moved at the same time. That phrase echoed in my mind. Let go of control. What if everything falls apart for good? But then I remembered a passage from Florence Scovel Shinn that I had read dozens of times. But that night, it hit me with power. Man must prepare to receive, and give thanks for what has not yet manifested. That is the secret. Surrender and trust. That night, I didn't say a prayer of asking. I said a prayer of surrender. I spoke to God like someone speaking to an old friend after years apart. And I said, I don't know how to get out of this anymore, but I know there is a way. I don't want to carry this alone anymore. I don't want to fight life anymore. Show me. Guide me. I surrender. It was the most honest prayer of my life. The next day, there was no lightning bolt from the sky, no unexpected money transfer, no fireworks, but something inside me had changed. Felt light. The kind of lightness you forget even exists. I had breakfast without guilt, opened my laptop without anxiety, and for the first time in years, I decided to simply respond to what life would bring. Without chasing, without forcing. And life brought something. An old email from a client from 2 years ago. She wanted to refer me for a consulting opportunity with an emerging company. Nothing huge, but a door. And the most beautiful part. This time I didn't grab it out of desperation. I said yes with gratitude, and I let it flow. That job led to another, and another. Small ones at first, but consistent. And more I understood. The less I tried to control, the more life surprised me. I began to notice that when something didn't work out, it was protection. And when something did come, it was a gift. This is the point I want to leave with you now. Control is different from commitment. Commitment is alignment. Control is fear disguised as competence. If you're sitting there, feeling like you're carrying everything on your own, if you believe that if you let go, everything will fall apart, let me tell you with all the love in the world, you're not here to carry. You're here to flow. Let go. Trust. Receive. Now tell me in the comments, what was the last thing you tried to control with all your strength? And it still went wrong. Maybe that's the sign you needed. Maybe it's time to surrender. Write it down. Because your story might be the beginning of someone else's healing. And your own too. In the next video I'll tell you about the final step. The simplest, the boldest, and the most powerful of them all. And how it changed my entire life in just 24 hours. If this story touched your heart, leave your like. And subscribe to the channel now, because the journey is just beginning, and you won't want to walk it alone. See you in the next step. The fourth step is where everything started to make sense. The final step, the act of liberation, and the 24-hour miracle. I had reached the darkest point of my journey. I had followed each previous step with an open heart. I changed my language, cultivated gratitude even on the hardest days, visualized the impossible with passion, and aligned my mind with the spiritual truth that Florence Scovel Shinn taught so clearly. But despite all that, something remained blocked. It was as if I were standing before a locked door, holding the key, but without the courage to turn it all the way. Money, flow, opportunities, they all still felt distant, as if an invisible glass separated me from what I deeply desired. I didn't understand what was wrong. I repeated affirmations, I meditated every day, and yet, deep in my chest, there was a knot of fear, a knot of control. And on a particularly silent night, when despair hit harder than pride, I sat on the floor of my living room, surrounded by candles and marked pages from Florence's books. I was rereading The Secret Door to Success for the third time that month, as if I were searching for a hidden code. And then there it was, the sentence that pierced my soul like a beam of light. Fear holds, faith releases. I felt my body tremble. I closed the book and rested my forehead on the floor, crying like I hadn't cried in a long time. It wasn't sadness. It was surrender. That was when I understood. I was trying to control even the divine flow. I said I trusted, but there was fear behind my faith. I claimed I had let go, but deep down I was still holding on, like someone clinging to sand, only to watch it slip through their fingers. I needed to do something different, something radically spiritual. And so, I did the unthinkable. I gave away the last amount of money I had kept out of fear. Not recklessly, but with active faith. I sent that money to a friend who was going through even more difficult times than I was. In the note I wrote, "It's not much, but it's everything. And it comes with love. May it multiply in your life, as it will in mine." In that moment, I felt my heart open like a flower. I didn't know what the next 24 hours would bring. But in that instant, for the first time in years, I was free. I had truly let go. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. The silence in the room was different, almost tangible. There was something in the air, as if the universe were whispering, "You've done your part. Now it's my turn." Around 10 a.m. my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something inside said, "Pick up." On the other end, a joyful, warm, and familiar voice. "Hi Susan. Do you remember me? This is Claire. We worked together years ago. You gave me some informal mentoring back then and it changed everything for me." I sat down, speechless. She continued, "This morning your name just popped into my head. Out of nowhere. Clear as day. Call Susan. I'm leading a startup now, and we need someone exactly like you. Are you still doing consulting work?" Smiled. But this time it wasn't a smile of relief. It was recognition. It was as if the universe had simply been waiting for me to let go of the rope, so it could move mountains. And that was just the first door. That same day I received 2 emails. Old proposals being reactivated. One of them had been on hold for over a year. The other was from a client I thought I had lost. At 6:12 p.m., the consulting contract landed in my inbox. The amount was more than I expected. But honestly, what moved me the most wasn't the money. It was what that contract represented. It was as if the universe were saying, "Now you get it. Now you're aligned with the truth. Now, you've understood." I cried again, but this time from deep gratitude. Yes, the money came back. But what truly returned was me. The version of me that trusts completely. That no longer lives in lack disguised as caution. That finally understood the last step is the most powerful. Not because it demands action, but because it demands surrender. Have you ever experienced something like this? Have you felt that only when you let go, everything finally began to flow? Share it below. I want to read your story. I want to feel your truth. Because when we share, we heal together. And if this video touched your heart, don't leave without subscribing to the channel. This spiritual journey is not a lonely road. It's a path of reunion. And every new video here is a new chance for you to remember who you truly are. Click subscribe and activate the bell, so the next miracle you need will arrive at exactly the right time. Just like it did for me. Because as Florence said, fear binds, faith releases, and when you release, the impossible simply happens. God bless you and see you in the next video.